A lot of people think fat, or what we call lipids, are a bad thing, which with anything, too much of something can be a bad thing. However, fat is a good thing in increments, So let's talk about the cool things that fat is good for our body. One, it protects us against the cold. So the more fat you have, the more insulated you are to the cold. You also protect your internal organs. It also is made up of every cell that we have, the phospholipid bilayer that is always talked about in class. It's a good source of energy, and it helps provide a little bit more fullness. It can slow down your digestion, in a way trying to make you feel a little bit more full. Lipids also help us carry fat-soluble vitamins, which is A, D, E, and K. I don't even know. You can kind of memorize it like that. If somebody asks you what the fat-soluble vitamins are, it's like, I don't even know. It's with an A instead of an I. It provides nutrients from linoleic acids. Don't know how to say that word. And it also just makes food taste so good, and it provides a smooth texture, and it cooks some of our food. Triglycerides. This is the big three. The largest category of lipids. Constitutes for 95% of all fats found in the food and adipose tissue, the fat tissue. Adipose tissue is basically your body's largest storage for energy, or fuel reserve. Having your own utility company to go and draw energy from, especially in times of crisis. Triglyceride molecules are made out of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, and they are arranged into two parts. And the main foundation is going to be glycerol. Then there are 3 fatty acid chains on the side. 1, 2, 3. The fatty acid chains contain carbon, which is attached to the hydrogen and oxygen. Triglycerides differ in fatty acid combinations by the chains. The number of carbon atoms in each chain. There is single bonds, double bonds, and even many double bonds. Fatty acid carbon chains can be short, medium, or long. Fatty acids can be categorized into saturated fats, monosaturated, and polysaturated. When a triglyceride is saturated, that means the carbon has bonded to the hydrogen atom, which means one single bond. And when 1 + 1 = 2, that equals a double, right? So when one carbon bond links or bonds with another, it's a double bond. And we have that polysaturated fat, which has multiple bonds. Saturated fat has no double bonds. Monosaturated fat has one double bond because it's mono, but has a double bond. And then polysaturated fats has multiple, because poly means saturated fat is from an animal. This is going to be solid at room temperature, kind of like when you cut a piece off of beef or pork. Saturated fat is also linked to cardiovascular disease, so be careful with saturated fats. Unsaturated fats is what you want to have more in your diet. Unsaturated fats is plant-based. These are the monosaturated and polysaturated. MUFA or PUFAs. Those have the linoleic acid that we talked about in the beginning. So these unsaturated fats are going to be liquid at room temperature, so oil. The only plant source lipid considered saturated is going to be tropical plants, like coconuts or palm. They're mainly used at baking because you can cook them at high temperatures. And with certain temperatures of oils, it can make the oil go bad and lose its nutrients when you're cooking. We're going to talk about oxidation of fatty acids. So when oxygen atoms can attach to the point where carbon would attach to hydrogen. When this happens, it basically spoils the oil. It's going to taste and smell rancid. And that is where saturated fats, or SFAs, come in, because they don't go bad as fast or as much, which is why a lot of companies tend to make things with a lot of saturated fat so it lasts longer on the shelf. But by eating saturated fats, we're causing more issues. The thing about saturated fats is they don't have any open carbon atom bonds. So oxygen can't attach and make it spoiled. But unsaturated fats do, which is why it's more vulnerable to oxygen and oxidizing the fat. Infusing hydrogen to the open bond in place of oxygen will make the unsaturated fat more resistant to the oxygenation at solid room temperature. That process is called hydrogenation. However, doing this creates trans fats, which basically does the same thing as saturated fats to our body. What this does is make things more spreadable. For example, peanut butter. Everyone loves Jiffy, but nobody likes natural peanut butter because of the oil on top and you gotta mix it and it's just a little work. But when you have Jiffy, you can just take it out and spread it, but it's actually really bad for you. So yeah, still gonna eat Jiffy though. Hydrogenation also is what turns the liquid into a solid so it can be reused multiple times, kind of like Crisco and stick of margins. And you can make carnival food and crispy chicken and stuff. We talked about before with proteins, there are essential and non-essential. So the essential fatty acids that we need, it's because our body is unable to make it, which is why we need to get it from our diet. And the best fats are omega-3s and omega-6s. That has that lionic acid that we're talking about, just like that, the MUFAs and PUFAs. Omega-3s, you can either take the vitamin or you can find it in flaxseed, soybean oil, walnuts, tuna, and salmon, also known as the anti-cardiovascular disease vitamin or nutrient. This is because your body's always forming little tiny blood clots, and omega-3 is a big part in helping destroy those blood clots that keep building up. So with that, it helps keep our blood thinner. Omega-6s are found in vegetable oil. So if somebody is on omega-3s, which is why it's really important to get vitamins when you're taking medical history, because it keeps blood thin, you shouldn't take it before a dental procedure because it can cause them to bleed more. Phospholipids, we talk about this all the time, just like I said in the beginning, the phospholipid bilayer. This is the part of the lipid that makes that cell membrane. This contains phosphorus. Then we have sterols. These are rings instead of chains of carbon atoms, and they don't contain any fatty acids. Sterol is basically cholesterol. Cholesterol basically helps maintain vitamin D and helps manufacture sex hormones like testosterone and progesterone. Lipoproteins, these are the transfer lipid proteins. Lipoproteins are triglycerides coated with protein, cholesterol, and phospholipids. Chylomicron is a type of packaged lipoprotein that is formed during the lipid absorption in the small intestine, transported to the lymph, into the bloodstream to be utilized for energy later. Do you remember Cheerios? And they talk about how it's good for cholesterol. There are different types of lipoproteins, HDLs, VLDs, and LDLs. These are density lipoproteins. HDLs are healthy, H. They transport dietary cholesterol. LDLs are bad. Those carry the cholesterol to the arteries and heart. And VLDLs are made in the body. It's mostly cholesterol and very little protein. So HDLs and LDLs transfer proteins dietary. And VLDL transport the body-made cholesterol. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to make another video.